February 1988, inside the Sydney Opera House, there was a kind of danger brewing. The audience was busy intently watching a man on stage. He was very young, barely 20 years old. A nurse appeared to be counting his pulse, indicating with her hand motion every time she felt a pulse on his left arm. The up and down movement of her hand was slowing down, and in seconds it just stopped. Was the man dead? He collapsed in his own chair while the nurse tried to hold him up. Suddenly, as everyone watched, his body began writhing on the chair. He looked like he was in agonizing pain. He looked as though he was having a seizure. But in a few seconds, it all stopped and he was getting back upright. But this time, he seemed to be a whole different person. He sat with both his hands on his thighs and looked at everyone menacingly. "I am Carlos," he declares. Carlos was a 2,000-year-old shamanic spirit with supernatural abilities. He astonished the audience with his pearls of wisdom, and he amazed them with answers to their questions.
Can you cure my migraines?
This is a question for a lady, and this lady is wearing aqua-colored crystals, but they are only glass. If they were real crystals, she will not have this migraine.
That answer looks a bit suspiciously evasive, but first we need to look at what just happened here. This was a time when a particular phenomenon was becoming commonplace in the US and slowly spreading across the rest of the world. The phenomenon was called channeling, where an individual claiming to have psychic abilities would let his or her body become a vessel for these ancient spirits to enter. The audience would know the spirit has entered because they would start speaking a funny voice or start making these strange sounds.
God bless you, Dr. People.
Remember, Carlos did this thing where his pulse would drop to the point of death, and I'll tell you exactly how he did that later on in this video. But right now, I think we have something we need to think about. See, all channelers have some way of letting their audience know that a new soul has possessed them. Otherwise, there's no way to tell when something like that has happened. And we should think about what's wrong with this. Anyone can fake voice or behavior, and we have to take their word for it, because there's no way to see or even detect a soul. Just like it's impossible to prove that they have been possessed, it's impossible to prove that they have not been possessed, which means someone can easily lie and get away with it, and we can't definitively say that they're lying. And they have a huge incentive to lie because they can get audiences in the tens or hundreds of thousands. When you combine these 4 points with the fact that there is no evidence for a soul, despite numerous attempts at establishing one, you can read up online about multiple experiments, some really famous experiments that tried and failed at establishing evidence for a soul. This is how we know that this whole channeling thing is a huge opportunity to scam people out of their money. So how do you expose this scam? Especially when you can't show that it's not true. How about this? How about we show people how easy it is to do this? That ought to make people a little more aware and cautious the next time someone says something like this. The next time they see someone do this. That is exactly where Carlos came in. Because he was a fraud, and not just any fraud. His intentions were to expose this entire phenomenon of channeling as fake by showing that literally anyone can do it. But how did he do it? And this makes me really curious now. Knowing that he was faking it, how did he drop his pulse down to 0? I mean, can you fake that? And I have another question. If he was a fraud, how did he get such a huge audience? The plane that arrived in Sydney carrying Jose Alvarez aka Carlos and his manager also carried another gentleman, James Randi, the world-renowned magician, but more importantly, a skeptic. Someone who had made it his mission to expose the frauds of the world. And he had quite the track record. He had gone head-to-head with acclaimed psychic Uri Geller and faith healer Peter Popoff and come out on top. Have you ever heard of planting a fraud? That's exactly what Randy did, with a plan to expose the fakes who claimed to be channelers. He was there every step of the way, guiding Jose on what to say to the press.
It will be astronomical in nature.
It will be astronomical in nature.
He trained Jose very well before coming to Australia. Jose himself was just a painter without even prior acting experience. And together with them, it was 60 Minutes Australia that orchestrated the entire thing. And Randy, being a magician, taught him a few tricks as well, including dropping a pulse to 0.
A ball's concealed under the arm and squeezed, and that stops the pulse.
Something that would become a trademark of his whenever the soul of Carlos entered him. Oh, by the way, where did he get that name? Jose decided to name the spirit after Randy's cat, Charlie, though he chose the Spanish version, Carlos. And the rest of the Australian media fell for it like whales in those DIY whale trap videos. Anyway, the media were told that Jose was a famous channeler from the USA, here to communicate with the Australian people. They were given a fake origin story and fake newspaper articles and even a fake video clip of Carlos on stage talking to an audience. The audience was actually a bunch of skeptics and staged by Randy and 60 Minutes. Randy even wrote a fake book on the teachings of the great Carlos, which he wrote up in about 20 minutes. You could have probably done it yourself. Once you read any of these channels' books with any amount of skepticism, you'll know what to write yourself because all the books are the same. Now, if you do a bit of background check on Carlos, you'd find that nobody in the US knows any spirit by that name. But that's not what the Australian media did. In those days where you had no internet to Google someone, they chose the easy option. They went with the information they were given and began calling him on their shows. In fact, just hours after landing in Australia, Jose and manager had been to 8 interviews. Desperate for ratings, these studios were more than willing to give Carlos free publicity. The same media that was supposed to be protecting people was now doing the opposite by exposing people to Carlos. And the result?
You saw it on television?
Yeah, we did. I saw the Today Show. Oh, yes, it was on TV.
Well, we saw it on Willis's show,
Did I see him on TV? Yes, I did.
The Sydney Opera House was sold out that night with hundreds of people that came to see Carlos. And after the show, they were given the opportunity to shop for all these new age artifacts like crystals and whatnot. Just like a genuine fraud show. Genuine fraud. What an oxymoron. Anyway, after this was all over, 60 Minutes Australia came out with this. Most of what I'm saying is from this documentary that they made. Soon, when the program was aired on TV with Randy announcing the whole thing was fake, the world was left wondering why people fell for this in the first place. My objective is to bring out stories like these, and in every one of these stories, there's a lesson to be learned. And this one is no exception. The thing here is that the victims of these scams, they're not entirely stupid, but they're victims of their own gullibility. See, most of us, we grew up in religious societies and religious households, and we form models in our heads of how the world works and how things in the world work. And in these religious contexts, there's an idea that people have souls, and that becomes part of our model. And these souls can wander freely outside the body and inhabit another body. When you constantly hear ideas like this, and when you finally see it happen before you, nothing seems strange to you. Why would you be skeptical of something that is not out of the ordinary in your eyes? But when someone adds a context to all this of how souls have no evidence for their existence, there is a chance that they might be skeptical. And once they're skeptical, they will begin to question these unestablishable ideas. People need to be protected from scammers like these. And the only people who can protect them are themselves. They just need to be armed with the tools that can help them do this. And the number one tool for that is critical thinking. And the number one thing you need for critical thinking is to be able to question things. Maybe channeling itself isn't as popular now, but a lot of other scams are. Like astrology or religious cults or even marketing scams. And they can all be beaten by using just this one tool. My entire channel is dedicated to critical and rational thinking. And if you like that yourself, and if you're new here, consider subscribing. And if you'd like to support me through other means, I've provided links for those below. I'd like to thank my highest tier supporters on Patreon and YouTube. And if you like this video, you might like this entire playlist on critical thinking. I'll see you in the next one. Till then, remember, science Scienceisdope.